Hello, everybody. This is Brian from Breaking Down Security. Before we start the show, got a last-minute announcement here. One of our slackers, Mike P., reached out to me. He works at SPECTER Ops in Boston, and he's looking to do a class called Adversary Tactics Red Team Operations Training Course in June of 2019. So there's a link in the show notes. It will start on Tuesday, June 4th, and run until Friday, June 7th. And the Eventbrite link is in the show notes, and it's roughly $4,000. And the last thing I heard was they're not planning on simulcasting it or anything, so you'll have to have a butt in a seat. So you'll learn things like designing and deploying sophisticated, resilient covert attack structure. You will learn how to utilize advanced Active Directory attack techniques, practice offense in depth by utilizing a variety of tools and techniques in response to defender actions and technical defenses. So if you're interested in that, you can always reach out to the folks at SPECTER Ops, click on the Eventbrite link, or you can probably Twitter DM them and ask them for more information. All right, now on with the show. Hello, everybody. Welcome back. This is Brian and Mr. Betcher, Breaking Down Security.
Hello. How goes it?
Not too bad. The joy of living in the Pacific Northwest, where we have weather. Apparently, winter has come. We received the White Raven from the Citadel, and in fact, it is winter. It took us about 4 months to get here, but I'm sitting on about 1.5 feet of snow at my house. So. First time we've ever had snow last this long.
Okay.
Yeah.
Wow. Now, I know in Minnesota, it was, 35 below?
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
We didn't get down to negative temperatures. I mean, it did get down to about 15 F, which is like negative 10 C. And, yeah, it's not expected to get warm. Normally when it snows here in at least in my neck of the woods, it's like 45, 50 the next day, and then it's gone. Or it rains over the top of it and washes it, melts the snow and washes it away. It's the first time we've had a whole week where we've had snow, and then more snow got dumped onto it last night. So, yeah, it was so bad. B-Side Seattle was supposed to be today. We're recording this on the February 9th, so... they decided and made the choice, very wisely, I think, in this case, to move it to the 23rd. So we'll see if there's been any changes in the weather before the 23rd, and hopefully we'll be able to enjoy B-Side Seattle. So, have you ever enjoyed weather like this, Mr. Betcher? How long has the snow stayed at your house? I've been in Austin, but in Austin we got barely a dusting of snow the entire time I was there.
Well, if it's freezing and there's anything falling from the sky, they close down the entire city. Right? Schools are out.
Yeah.
Kids are walking around, falling down on the sidewalks because they're not used to the slippery ice.
Yeah.
And so, it typically lasts a day or two, and then it's gone. Right. Nothing like in the middle of the country, Ohio, Minnesota, that area where your refrigerator is actually used to keep food warm. Mm-hmm. Yep. Yeah, we've actually taken to putting stuff outside because it's like 30 degrees C here, or 30 degrees Fahrenheit, which is 1 C or whatever, negative 1 C. Yeah, and it keeps things nice and cold. I got fake soda here, and I've been enjoying that. So yeah. My wife has gotten me on the keto thing, so I'm trying to not eat a lot of carbs. And one of the things is I've had to give up my soda fetish, and I'm drinking this hipster LaCroix stuff that everybody seems to enjoy. So, yes,
no sugar, so it's like a really bad Sprite or a 7-Up in this case. So it's all right, but it's not the same. So Ms. Berlin, for those of you who've not heard her voice right now, she's on travel. she hit us up and said she won't be back until Monday, so we'll reach out to her before I go on vacation next week, and we'll get another show out. So this week we have a couple of news stories, and I wanted to discuss something that I've wanted to discuss for a while and just hadn't gotten around to it, and it kind of segs out of one of the stories that we had. So the first story that we have is a vendor allegedly assaults a security researcher who discovered a massive vulnerability. So there's a company called Transient. I assume it's called Transient. They have
I think so.
Yeah. They have a product called Power Kiosk, and so this software is used in casinos, or some of the biggest casinos: Caesars, Hard Rock, MGM, and Vegas.
Right. So what you do with these kiosks is you can, I guess, get rewards for your gameplay, and then spend the rewards on movie tickets, show tickets, things like that all the casinos have, maybe more gameplay. And so these things are actually all over the world,
really,
not just in the U.S. They kind of third party with another company, but it's their stuff under that other brand. Mm-hmm. And the researchers found some pretty glaring vulnerabilities that we would just be shocked to find.
Yeah.
Open FTP to the internet, clear text, everything, driver's licenses flying across the internet, unencrypted, just all kinds of stuff.
Right. Yeah. The researcher alleges the COO actually attacked him after a talk at a London conference. So they were talking about facial recognition features in kiosks, and they were able to upload biometric data to servers. I guess the researchers tried to, reach out and tell Transient about the vulnerability, some of which is the flaw allows for personal data to be transmitted in the clear, unencrypted.
So what happened was they got together with a reporter because they wanted somebody, I guess, in the middle to they tried to contact Transient, and they had no luck for months. Mm-hmm. And finally they contacted a journalist, and the journalist tried, and the journalist couldn't. And so he tweeted something out. The FBI saw that tweet, and they said, okay, we're going to get with this company, and we'll have a conference call. All so right. They had the conference call with the journalists, the researchers, the Transient, and the FBI. And Transient was very cordial and said that they would fix the vulnerabilities, and they would pay the researchers, I guess, $60,000 for their troubles, and they were happy with that.
Nice.
But then things fell apart. No fixes were implemented. No contact was made with the researchers. No money exchanged hands, for the reward for finding the vulnerabilities. And things just broke down at that point. And one of the researchers noticed that the CEO was going to be at a conference in London, so he decided to show up, he or she. I don't know which. And there's videos online, apparently. Right. I haven't opened them yet, but yeah. And was apparently assaulted at the conference.
Yeah. So it looks like Transient, it was like a vendor talk. They were going to talk about the kiosks and their systems and how they were using facial recognition and uploading the biometric data to their servers. So it sounds like a vendor type conference where it's like, here's all the cool stuff we're doing, buy our stuff. The researcher approached, and apparently the COO lunged at the researcher, grabbed him by the clothes on his chest, and then tore his attendee badge away, telling the researcher he didn't need it anymore. So,
yeah, pretty bad stuff. Now, on some of the vulnerabilities they found, they were actually able to build their own personal kiosk at home, and then access the API of the server, and then start doing whatever the hell they wanted to with their kiosk. Yeah, right. Give themselves credits allegedly. So that's pretty awful stuff, and zero things were encrypted, right? According to this article. And not only, I mean, the journalist mentions that there was no security whatsoever involved in these. Nothing.
Wow.
Okay.
Yeah.
So even their networks at the casinos were wide open.
Right.
So
yeah. So after this story dropped, apparently Twitter had some fun, and there's a gentleman by the name of Daniel Iskison. There's a link in the show notes to his Twitter thread where he's like, "Hey, let's go look at some of the Android apps." So he started doing a tweet thread, and he said, "It turns out Atrient's been creating and releasing Android apps in their customers' names." So they Atrient also packaged their clients' private RSA keys into the aforementioned apps for likely use for backend communications.
Wow.
So as an Android developer, you probably should know that you're not supposed to put what amounts to, I would say, hard-coded credentials. This is the equivalent of hard-coded credentials. It allows you to do all kinds of nasty stuff if private key mat's involved in the apps themselves.
You never let your private key go out to away from your possession, right? So if you send code out, even though the code is like in binary format, you're still sending the keys along with it, and people could reverse engineer that code and get the key out of it.
Right. Yep. So
Daniel, never do that, and that's the kind of thing that happened with I guess Sony put in the keys in their CDs, so you couldn't copy the CDs, but of course the CDs were or DVDs, right? I think this is kind of where this started. You give the code to the customer, and eventually somebody's going to find it.
Oh, sure.
And things like that. I guess that's a good example of why you shouldn't give out the keys to the kingdom.
Yeah. I remember when Blu-rays came out, they had the DRM on them. So the media was encrypted in such a way, and the keys to unlock it were put into side of all the Blu-ray players. So I've got a Sony Blu-ray player over there. People finally figured out how to take those keys out of the machine, and they were able to, rip Blu-ray videos without, having to, do it, without having to have the player in place. So, it's DRM that just isn't useful. But yeah, in this case, it's like they put private keys, and Daniel actually goes through how the step-by-step on how he managed to do it. He downloaded the APK using what looks like gplay CLI. You use something like Dex D2J dex2jar.com, and then you convert that to you're decompiling because it's all Java. There's a lot of Java in there, APK tools being used. So you scroll down through, and it gives him it's a great write-up on how to do it. And the client list that Atrient had on their website's been removed because obviously somebody got wind that was being referred to, and it shows all of their customers that use their not good apps, or in this case. So Atrient's definitely not doing the needful bit there to be able to
right. And the researchers were able to find out pretty much all of their infrastructure once they knew what they were looking for through Shodan queries. So
yeah,
there you go.
Yeah, casinos take security fairly seriously. So yeah, I would imagine that Atrient wasn't having a good week that week, and the last thing that COO wanted to see was somebody who's saying, "Hey, I've hacked all your stuff. Where the hell's my money that we agreed on?" Which, I'm sure that people are lawyering up, and yes, like CSO Online said, this won't be the last we'll hear about this. I'm sure we'll hear more about it in the future. So
yeah, and the FBI agent that was on the call actually asked Atrient if they had disclosed the vulnerability to their customers, and they said they were looking into that. I don't see a mention in the article that they actually did. But,
yes. So the answer is no. We're trying to figure out how to tell our customers that our software is not good. We'll get back to you on that. So, yep. So the Linux kernel gets another option to disable SPECTER mitigations. This was from ZDNet. Apparently, enough people have complained and there's been enough issues going on that with the SPECTER and the meltdown related single thread indirect branch predictors vulnerability, when those came out, one of the things that people were worried about when the patches came out to fix that was that there was a roughly 30% performance dip on some applications. So PHP, anything that required, that
utilized it, right? Processor utilized.
Right. It was causing system administrators to reconsider applying some of the patches. So they said that, a lot of the vulnerabilities remain theoretical threat. There's no malware strain or threat actors ever use these in a real world attack. So people have started calling on the Linux project to have options to disable these protections, which I don't know. I can see the reason.
Look, this is kind of like, this is psychological. These processors were able to get faster by these look-ahead procedures that ended up not being as secure as they needed to be.
Right.
So you had a bonus, right?
Right.
And a behavioral psychologist will tell you that, okay, they've done studies, for example, with monkeys, and they give them 2 bananas and they take away one of the bananas that they had given them.
Right.
Right. At first, they're giving them one banana, and then they start giving them 2 bananas, and then they take away 1 banana. Right. They have 1 banana like they always did. Right. But when you give them 2 and then take 1 away, they go absolutely ballistic.
Yeah.
Right. Even though their net was the same.
Right.
It's that feeling that, you're taking something away from me. And same thing with this. I mean, the processors were running faster than they should have been running.
Mm-hmm. Right? Yeah. And the 30% hit on performance, it's not for everything, but if you're using an environment, and I think we've talked about this in the past, but if you're using, an application in, say, AWS or something, and you have instances that are running, and you implement these kinds of fixes, you're going to lose 30% of performance. So that translates into more money being used on the scale of 30% additional assets, because you're going to have to spin up more instances to get the same throughput or to get the same work. I would argue that you may be able to remove some of that inefficiency by, doing things like refactoring code or trying to find inefficiencies in the code of the developers. Obviously, that's too difficult when you could just spin up, 50 instances in 5 seconds versus trying to spend months refactoring and finding, inefficiencies in the code. So, I can completely understand why they want to remove these things, but it's, theoretical things like vulnerabilities like Rowhammer that we've heard about in the past. They were like, oh, it looks nice, we can't, it looks, cool, we can flip bits, whatever. It's purely theoretical. And then 6 months later, you're seeing, people weaponizing it in JavaScript in browsers and stuff, being able to do Rowhammer attacks in the browser to machines and flipping bits that way. So I would posit that eventually they're going to have to turn this on, because people are going to find vulnerabilities or ways to exploit the SPECTER 2, probably through a browser, I would imagine. Yeah,
these vulnerabilities may be hard now, but over time they get easier to exploit.
Right.
We've seen that with some of the vulnerabilities back when we were at the place. It was a low at the time, and now it's a high.
Yeah, absolutely.
Same things.
Yep. Actually, I seem to remember reading something today about Firefox doing some kind of site isolation bit to help cut down on that kind of attack. Firefox site isolation. Project Fission. Yes, I just saw that the other day. So, as of February 7th, I'll put this link in the show notes. But Project Fission brings site isolation to Firefox, SPECTER, meltdown protection. So, great. We can, disable this stuff in our kernel and still be protected by Firefox. Firefox is going to save us in a lot of respects. Not really, but, this is just one way that applications are actually making it so that it's not possible to use those kinds of vulnerabilities. It may be that Mozilla has figured out, in fact, that there may be a possibility to, it's not theoretical so much. It's, there will be browsers that could be used in very similar to the Rowhammer vulnerability and poke at it. I'll put that link in the show notes, and I'll put it here in the chat window if you want to look at it too, Mr. Betcher. There you go. So the site isolation effort's called Project Fission. First development milestone is expected to be reached by the end of February. So you'll be able to take full advantage of Fission in Firefox this month. So it's going to have mitigations to protect against side channel attacks, variants, Spectre variants 1 and 2, and Meltdown variant 3. And it will has the advantage of protecting users against unknown future attacks using this method. I don't know how you can say that. You don't even know if there are. It's the unknown unknowns. You don't know if there's actually unknown future attacks that can do that. Google Chrome already has multi-process architecture, so Firefox has only adopted the framework relatively recently. So if you're using Chrome, you're probably fairly safe. If you're using Firefox, grab a nightly alpha or a canary build or something and try using that. So there you go.
Nice.
Yeah. Put that in the show notes just for our own edification here. Ding. All right. So one of the other things I saw this week was very interesting. Capsule8.com, they had a blog talking about exploiting systemd's journal D, and they had a two-part blog post on this, and these were based on two vulnerabilities that they had. User influence size passed to alloc A, allowing manipulation of stack pointers, and a heap-based memory out-of-bounds read yielding memory disclosure. So obviously memory disclosure is not good, because if you can disclose parts of the memory, you can get all kinds of information out of the memory, much like Heartbleed was, where you could
like private RSA keys or something, right?
Right. So there's a interesting write-up. Part 1 and Part 2 are both available on their website. It's very, very cool. They have some kind of product that they create. But yeah, you can use systemd, journal D. So ways of interacting with journal D, which is the logging interface. So they have the syslog interface, the journal D native interface, and journal D service for redirection. So you can redirect the service standard in, standard out, and get log information. And it says all these interfaces have dedicated Unix sockets in run/systemd/journal D.
All right. So what is systemd and what is journal D?
You just made people run off the road, Betcher. So,
sorry.
Yeah, Mr. Betcher, you'll have to excuse him. He's a Windows person. Hence the software that he's creating, LogMD. It's Windows-based only for a reason, because, Windows is a little more complicated. But you would be surprised how complicated systemd is. I mean, I was looking through it this week, and, there's people... There's two camps. There's probably three camps. There's people who like it. There's people who hate it vehemently with a verve that I have not seen in a long time. And then there's people who are just like, it's just a thing to use. It was used to replace like the old run levels or RC RC daemons that you used to use when you were doing like Solaris or whatever. So in startup mechanisms, there was RC.
So it's like run keys, right? To start applications automatically.
Yeah, kinda.
Like services.
Yeah, it's like services that get started when you bring up the new system. So let me pull up. There's a better description for it online here. Okay, there we go. So it's a software suite. It lies in the area after the Linux kernel. So, you have your BIOS and your UEFI, and then it loads the kernel, or it loads, various systems. Systemd is what's known as PID1, process ID 1. There's a number of bits involved with it. Let me pull up that picture here. So you've got the hardware, and then you've got the kernel layers. So there's things in the kernel like process schedulers, memory managers, control groups, file systems that are called network interfaces that are loaded in drivers, render modes for various graphics cards and such. Control groups are then passed to systemd, which is PID1. So things like systemd, which is its own daemon. Systemd has a systemd daemon. There's a login-d. There's journal-d, which is the logging function. So all of the logs are stored in a binary format, which I thought was kind of a big deal. Older Linuxes and Unixes had log files that were not in text. And the idea was binary format makes them easier to index and easier to search and what have you.
And they're smaller.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Well, I guess there's some compression involved there, I would imagine.
Well, if you've got a 64-bit system and you've got the letter A, you're not using 64 bits to store that letter, right?
Right.
Just using a few. But if you have a text file that is your log, it takes up a lot of space,
right? More
so than a binary file would.
Right. Some of the other things that systemd PID1 starts is things like network D, user session. One of the big differences that systemd has over older versions is the startup is in parallel, and it's not sequential. If you've used Solaris back in old timey days before Solaris 10 and Open Solaris, you had kill scripts and start scripts. So S35 would be DHCP, S37 would be some daemon that has to run like a database or something. S99 was always where we would put Apache because it had to start up after everything else. So S99 would be one of the last things that got started. Everything was done in numerical order. Kill scripts were done in just the opposite order. So you had, K01 through K99 would be, K01 would be Apache needs to be shut down, and then it would shut down everything else finally. And then when it would run a sync to make sure all the super blocks were lined up before it shut down the system. Otherwise, you could, before journaling, it would start up in an inconsistent state, which was something you never wanted your Solaris box to do. So journal-d in this case is the logging format. It's in binary. Hey, so you deal a lot with Windows Event Viewer in Windows. The log files in Windows are in a binary format too, aren't they? You can't just open them up in Notepad.
Yeah, it's cool that Linux has caught up with the binary, idea of putting the logs in that format. And it's not that it's smaller just because of or more efficient just because it's not storing it in ASCII text or whatnot. It's that it can link a lot of things in the log file together, like some metadata. Right. So all these log entries may have the same metadata, and it doesn't have to write that metadata over and over and over and over again. It can just link it to the metadata that's already there.
Right.
So when you have a pointer instead of all that stuff listed out again and again. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. And so there's where your efficiency comes in.
Right. So there's a really good write-up. It's a lot of text to read, so I'm just going to go ahead and pull up the CVE for one of the vulnerabilities here. According to redhat.com, so an allocation of memory without limits could result in the stack clashing with another memory region, was discovered in systemd journal-d when many entries are sent to the journal socket. So it sounds like you're overloading the journal socket. If you can, find some way to generate enough traffic or generate enough random bits to be sent to the journal socket, it tends to overload. So it almost sounds like there's I don't want to say buffer overflow, but there's definitely a way of modifying something in the stack or, like I mentioned in the heap here, to cause memory to be read because if it can clash and override into other sections, you're just having all kinds of issues. So out of bounds, out of bounds read was discovered in systemd journal D. That's the second vulnerability they were talking about in the way it parses log messages. Okay, so this is a parsing issue. When there are log messages that terminate with a colon, a local attacker can use this flaw to disclose process memory data. Okay, so it's a parsing bug, much like how Tripwire does when you're taking packets. A lot of times, and I learned it at SANS 504, a lot of people suggest, because there's less vulnerabilities in Tripwire, to use TCP dump to capture the packets that way and then view them in Wireshark later. Because if you can cause a parsing error in Wireshark. I kept saying Tripwire, but I meant Wireshark. Wireshark, yeah. There's parsing errors in the filters in Wireshark, but that can cause undesired operations. So since there's
still
to this day,
I mean that's old.
Oh, it's not so old. Let me go check and see what the last Wireshark vulnerability was. I mean, it's a great program. Don't get me wrong. I love it. Wireshark parsing errors.
Well, I use it.
Well, what do you use it for?
Looking at your packet captures.
Oh.
It's in a nice format.
Yeah?
Okay. So if you're troubleshooting something, everybody who does troubleshooting on network stuff, incident responders, forensics people, I mean, you'd want to do that.
Okay. Yeah, you were talking to me about some work you're going to be doing. To be honest, I don't see anything on CVE details since 2014 with regards to Wireshark vulnerabilities, but the last ones that were in there were definitely parser issues. libpcap file parser allows remote code exec. So that's the big thing. Obviously, this is along the same lines here, where they're just reading. They're just reading information from memory, which, as we talked about with the applications, that could be private keys, that could be information that could be used to gain information. It could also be used to corrupt memory in some cases. The part one of this blog, which Nick Gregory did, I really should reach out and see if he wants to come on the show and talk about it. The first part of the proof of concept was with ASLR disabled, and then later on it was actually with ASLR running. So they have found a bypass in ASLR to be able to do those things. So all right, well, let me get back to the systemd stuff that we were talking about. So one of the things that I was poking around, I was learning about systemd being a super daemon for all daemons. So it replaced even inetd, which was like the first or even second super daemon. It was a daemon that ran other daemons. So like fingerd, Echo, Daytime, all the charge-in, all that other stuff, all those older daemons were started by inetd or by other systems on that. I actually found the original blog post, which there's a bunch of links in our show notes, but somebody had talked about the proposal back in 2010 of systemd, and they were trying to say that historically Linux, the software acting as PID1 was a venerable sysvinit package, though it had been showing its age for a while. Many replacements were suggested. I remember Upstart. They were talking about one of them took off. It was called Upstart, which was now in all of its major distributions. And so they said, unfortunately, the sysvinit was not fast. So they said the fast and efficient boot up are two things are critical. You start less or you start more in parallel, which is exactly what systemd does. Systemd's, of course, not without, the journal D stuff is just some of the first, one of the first vulns that I've heard of that has affected it. There are definitely other vulnerabilities. The one thing I did find out about systemd is you don't need to have systemd. You can actually replace it with the old school system. There is no version of Linux that I found that needs systemd. It's just a lot of the maintainers are, or of those various distros, have implemented systemd. You can rip it out if you'd like, or you can use a system like Alpine, which arguably is the most popular Linux version because everything Docker related runs on it. You just have to have fairly you have to have a lot of knowledge on how to do it. So let me see which one. So yeah, here's another vulnerability, 2018-15-686. A vulnerability in unit deserialize allows an attacker to apply arbitrary state across it systemd re-execution. So can improperly influence systemd execution and lead to root privilege escalation. So that was that came out October of last year, and I mean it's just more code. So and since it runs a lot of things on the system, everything runs as root until it drops down the various the daemons. So if you can get access through systemd in any way, shape, or form, you're going to have root access to anything on the box.
Kernel level, right?
Oh yeah. So yeah, I was doing some research, so it was interesting. Control groups. I want to talk. I want to find somebody who's smarter about systemd than I am. So maybe we could get that guy from Capsule 8 to come on and talk about the vulnerability. Cgroups were very interesting because it uses isolation of resource usage, which is how it makes it possible to do things like containers, I would imagine, without being more cumbersome. But it isolates resource usage of processes. So it says Apache's only going to be able to use so much CPU, so much memory, so much disk I/O. So I mean, and there's no shortage of arguments against systemd out there. I mean, there are a lot of places that like to rail against it.
I seem to be remembering a lot of people were passionate about the change.
Yeah. Some of the things they mentioned here is it suffers from scope creep. So it's an init system. It provides a UEFI bootloader. It provides a login manager. Provides a mounting front end. One of the things that I found ironic was the log files are in a binary format, but the startup scripts, because there's still startup scripts in that for being able to run things. So anything with a .service, .device, .swap, it can even act as a cron daemon in many cases if you use like .timer. I put an example from a site that I was looking at on ArchWiki. Arch Linux, sorry, the Arch Linux wiki, and they were talking about, etc systemd system foo.timer, and you can actually say run foo weekly or on boot, and, on boot, wait 15 minutes and then run this. And I was like, wow, okay, so they're trying to replace the cron daemon. That's something I didn't even realize. And, so, people who are doing pen testing, if you can't find anything running in the cron, maybe you should check and see what they have in like .timer files, for instance. Or maybe you can, if you gain access and you want to create some persistence, you create a foo.timer because, myself, and I learned this, I would have gone to the cron to look for it, but not a lot of people may be looking at foo.timer, or in the system directory under timer files.
True that.
The only thing about the timer files is a separate service must also exist of that. So if you create shell.timer, then you'll need to create a shell.service kind of thing. Yeah. It's not necessarily true in all cases. You can actually create transient timers using systemd control or whatever. You can create on the fly type of timer files. So
this is where pen testers can put their persistence.
Right. Just another method by which you do persistence. I don't know anybody who's thought of using timer before, but that's that's just something I thought of. So let me see. Is there anything you want to talk about? Anything you found interesting this week?
No, we talked about some new malware on BDIR.
Oh, yes, a new episode of that's coming out.
we did capture one that was pretty interesting. We'll be talking about next episode. So yeah.
Okay.
That's really nice.
So, CSEC East, my monthly meetup here in Seattle, we met a gentleman by the name of Nate and one by the name of Ash, and they work for the county, Lewis County, and they love BDIR. They were like, why can't it be more often? And I was like, well, you can't put that much awesome with Michael Goff and Mr. Betcher in a room there.
You'll get overdosed.
You'll get an overdose,
have to go to rehab.
Yeah, that's right. So they only do it, once a month for 2 hours. So, set it at like half speed or something. So you can listen to them talk like this, or something.
It'll last longer that way.
It lasts longer. Right. So yeah, that's quite good. So when is that expected to come out? Is the sound being modified right now by Mr. Goff?
Yes. So that should be out in a few days.
Okay. All right. We'll definitely poke that and make that happen.
We may do another one real soon. I mean, it's ready to go.
Well, technically, you didn't do one for January. So is this the January one or the February one?
Shh, be quiet. Why do you have to say stuff like that?
Sorry, my man. Sorry. Yeah. Well, there's another nine episodes that you can listen to at about 2 hours a pop. So if you're interested in listening to those, then
right.
Then
and it's not just IR stuff, right? So you don't have to be in IR to listen to BDIR, right? We take a deeper dive into security and what stuff that we deal with a lot in IR,
right?
But it has to do with the total realm of security. So if you're a manager, you may get a lot out of it just by listening and some of the things we have to deal with, the malware, and we do articles too, and
cool,
all that.
Okay. Yeah, my week, we've been so freaking busy at work. Just, they usually, you hear most pen test companies are like, oh yeah, the fourth quarter is the biggest one. So, October through December, and the first quarter is a lull in activity. And I'm telling you, I'm juggling like 6 to 8 projects right now. Between in various stages, either being pre-test, testing, or doing readouts and stuff. So one of the things that I've had to learn how to do in the last couple weeks is time management. Making sure that I've got enough time to do everything. And when you're working multiple projects at one time, you've got to make sure that you don't accidentally confuse one company for another, and or asking a tester about an engagement, and you're like, oh yeah, I'm sorry, you're not on this engagement. I have to go talk to Bill or whatever. And it's being a PM, it's not easy work. I mean, I'm reading reports, and we have to make sure that they make sense to the customer and that their best interests are at heart in that, and that the attacks that we give them are based on the ideas that they want us to attack by, whether it be malicious insider or what's important to them. If it's anything that, gets in the way of patient information, for instance, we've got gigs dealing with medical data or PII or PCI related stuff. So, being a PM, it's definitely interesting deal. If anybody's interested in wanting to join me over at Leviathan as a PM, we wouldn't hate on it. We've got a lot of testers and very few PMs. So if you're a security guy, it's like, oh, I'm tired of doing the daily grind, or, I want to be able to kind of stay in both lanes, you can reach out to us and maybe become a managing consultant. So
now, as long as you have companies like
Atrient.
Yeah. Atrient.
Yeah.
I'm sure you'll have your share of work in the first quarters.
Oh, God, yeah.
Going forward.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. We tend to not, we're already under contract with them. So, Atrient would have been the ones reaching out and asking us those questions. So I'm hoping we wouldn't have been roughed up, thrown up against the wall or whatever, if that was the case, and having our lunch money taken away from us. So, yeah.
I think it's fair to say they hadn't had their applications pen tested.
Oh, I think that's still the case, considering...
Because we're talking like 1992 technology here.
Oh, what, kiosks?
As far as the encryption.
Oh, right. Or the lack of? to let go. It's amazing. We do a fair bit of web pen testing, and we still find, vulnerabilities, SQL injection. We still find, cookie flags, simple things like cookie flags. Secure and HTTP only. Having those in your cookies is very important. Make sure that those cookies go over your HTTPS connection, because passing your session token IDs over an HTTP channel, for instance, is never a good thing. So we still see findings like that. We still put that in as a finding because it's easy for us to write up, but two, it's just one that it's just basic hygiene when you're working on web app pen tests. So, well, I think we need to go. I'm going to go out and salt my driveway, de-ice it, and make sure that it doesn't refreeze on us tonight. We're supposed to go to Rock of Ages in Seattle tonight, so we're going to be driving very, very slowly down to Seattle and possibly very, very slowly coming back. So. Mr. Betcher, I know with the BDIR stuff, we'll be posting that hopefully this week. But tell us a little bit about what you do in your off time.
In my off time, well, I have family, I have work, I have podcasts. Mm-hmm. But when I do have a bit of time, I work on LogMD.
Right.
So that's you guys should check it out. It's free, mm-hmm. right? And it's a standalone, so it'll run on any Windows platform. And we have a lot of documentation with LogMD. I mean, the manual is probably 50 pages, mm-hmm. something like that. It's probably worth the price of admission on its own if you get the pro version, but it's scriptable, right? So you can use it with PowerShell. You can remote and run scripts. And if you've ever tried to parse PowerShell logs, and everybody says, wow, all the information is in PowerShell, and hackers are starting to get away from PowerShell just because of the powerful logging that it does have. But there are tons of malware that use PowerShell initially. A lot of droppers use PowerShell to mm-hmm. go fetch malware and execute it. So if you're not looking at PowerShell logs, you're doing yourself a disservice. And parsing those logs was a huge challenge for us, and LogMD will do that for you.
Right on.
And there's a lot of cool stuff coming out, and we're about to release. I think we fixed a few bugs, and now we're just looking over the final version of 2.2, I think it is.
Oh wow!
So yeah, we're about to release another free version. So everybody who downloaded a prior version, and we have your email, we'll send you an email with a link that says, "Hey, we got a new version for you. You can go download it now."
Nice. Okay,
so check it out.
So it's a freemium model. Do you have the ability to add plugins, or what do you get in the paid version that you don't get in the free version?
In the paid version, you get a lot of intelligence along with the free capabilities. So, for example, you have the ability to build a PowerShell config. So if you're looking for a certain number of special characters, or you're looking for keywords and you want to whitelist those keywords out because your admins are using those scripts, well, you can just discount those right off.
Nice.
LogMD will see the whitelist and say, okay, I know about this. I'm not even going to send it to your file. And then you have the ability to, and this is with the free version too, ship all those files that LogMD creates, which is parsing all the logs and adding whatever intelligence to it up to your SIM. So you can have all that capability as well. Nice. And we have a really powerful auto run also that you can whitelist, and auto VT lookups. So if you get a new file, let's say somebody installed something, and you can set it to automatically query virus total mm-hmm. and give it a score, so that your SOC or whatever can see, okay, I got something, but it has a score of 0. Or I have something and it has a score of 10. Ooh, that's bad.
Right.
So then they can call you right away if it's a score of 0, or if virus total has never seen it before, that's bad as well.
Nice.
So you can do those auto virus total lookups.
Very cool. Okay. Yeah. So how people go? How would they find you or get a hold of you if they wanted to talk more about that?
they can go to log-md.com, read all about it.
Okay. And your Twitter is?
At Betcherpwned. BOETTCHERPWNED.
Right on. Ms. Berlin, of course, she was traveling. She's a...
I thought she was on a Soma holiday.
No, she's a valued member of our show, and, we let her have that time off, because as I've always said, I'm a very benevolent dictator type person. I'm trying to make sure that I've got her other hacker health. No. What is it? Mental health hackers?
Oh, yeah.
There it is. Hackers Health. Okay. So, you can find her on Twitter, of course. InfoSystir, INFOSYSTIR. She's also got the Mental Health Hackers, which is villages that she likes to help out with outreach. It's nonprofit. So if you're looking to give some money to an organization to, help out with the mental health issues, or help educate people on how to, I don't know. One of the talks we saw at DerbyCon was somebody talked about how to find a good therapist if you needed one, especially with the stress of doing engagements, or possibly having to keep secrets from organizations or things that can wear on people. So one of the talks was about how to find a good therapist, or coping mechanisms when you've got social anxiety, that kind of stuff. She also is at Hackers Health on Twitter, and she's active in our mental health channel on our Slack, which you can join us on our Slack by tweeting a DM to us over on Brakesec, Brakesec. That's our official podcast. Or sending an email to bds.podcast@gmail.com. And, our Slack, very active. I don't know how many users do we have. I turned it off because I was a good and dutiful podcaster, and I didn't want to get any notifications on my Slack here. So
I do not know.
Oh, I know. Let me see. Hallway Con. The Hallway Con that we have, which is like a perpetual hallway, where we run the thing like a perpetual conference. So we have various channels where you can talk about things like IoT, 2FA and identity-based stuff. We have a job board. We have a revolving career advice channel, which also does resume review. Book club's very active. I honestly need to get the CTF club started back up again. Maybe once I get unbusy at work, I'll be able to, see my way clear to thinking through that. The DFIR channel is quite popular. One of our moderators, Scott Pack, runs, and Megan Roddy, runs the SIM and logging channel. And they have a class and a meetup that they do where they talk about SIM-related issues, indicators of naughty stuff, kinds of run hand in hand with the threat hunting channel. So if you're interested in finding out information, like I said, send Brakesec, and also or email us at bds.podcast@gmail.com. So, thank you to our patrons. We take in no sponsor money, that at least on the Breaking Down Security podcast. BDIR does have sponsors, but your dollar may not seem like a lot to you, but it actually helps us with things like web hosting. Helps us out with paying for the Zoom that we use every month for our classes and for podcasting ourselves, and the time that it takes to process these things and get them out. So we appreciate all of our Patreon donors, and if you're interested, help us out there. That'd be great. So you can find the show on any podcast platform. Spotify, even though Spotify seems to be fairly not good, they just acquired some kind of major podcast network, and people are worried that Spotify is going to make all the new content on Spotify like behind a paywall, for instance. So we'll never have a paywall like that. The podcast will always be free. We still use Libsyn. Thankfully, they haven't been bought out yet. So it's important to us to keep the knowledge free and available to all. So I'm at Brian Brake if you want to follow me on Twitter, BRYANBRAKE, and yeah, tell a friend if you found interest in the show. If you find, we've got a lot of new listeners because there are several podcasts out there that are going the way of the dodo. So we appreciate any new listeners that have come. If they've come from podcasts like Southern Fried Security or Rallysec, for instance, we're glad you're here joining us. So, all right, I'm done for the week. Mr. Boettcher, how about you? Got anything else?
No.
Cool. All
let's go eat.
Yes, let's go and go see the Rock of Ages. So I'm looking forward to that.
Yeah.
Yep. So that was it from World Headquarters here in the outside of Seattle. This has been Breaking Down Security. Have a great week. Be nice to one another, please. Even though Twitter is just a cesspool of awful. Take care of yourself because you're the only you have. And we'll talk to you again soon.
Bye-bye.